Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it unacceptable like any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Welcome back and welcome to the last Donnybrook of 2018. Next week we'll start our 32nd year. Thank you so much for joining us. And thanks to our friends at the Gatesworth for making this program possible, as you do week in and week out. Let's meet the panelists for this edition, starting with Brenda Talent from the Show Me Institute. He's Joe Holleman from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. One of our founders who was in that seat almost 32 years ago, Ray Hartmann. And looking a little bit like James Bond from the St. Louis American, STLmag.com, and celebrating the new year a little early, the one and only Alvin Reid. Thank you, Alvin, for your sartorial splendor, as always.
Alvin Reid.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Ray, 32 years. Congratulations and all that.
And to Bill.
And Bill as well, who's on assignment, along with Wendy Weiss. Want to ask you about this 2018. You've seen a lot of crazy years, maybe none crazier than 2018 in many ways, but the top story had to be Eric Greitens, the governor of the state of Missouri, retiring. But aside from that, if you were going to pick a runner-up for the top story of this year, what would it be?
Well, yeah, it isn't every year that you have a governor resign in disgrace. We miss him. I would say locally, certainly the Wesley Bell's election, which was just a stunning change after 28 years of Bob McCullough, and just that would be the biggest one. At the state level, I do think there were probably 3 other stories that were big stories. One was the voters overwhelmingly rejecting a right to work at a level that I don't think anybody expected. Second was medical marijuana finally passing, and certainly the third, and I like those 2. The third that I didn't care for, which was a huge story, was Josh Hawley beating Claire McCaskill.
Well, that's the one I was going to say, in that, especially, with the Democrats took the House, in Washington, and with the gains, not gains, but the Senate seats that Democrats did win that they didn't hold before, had, Claire won, it'll make a difference in the future. So that's the one I would list up there.
Joe?
Yeah, I think McCullough's loss, and not to take away from Wesley Bell's victory, but McCullough was one of those, people weren't even putting up candidates. Republicans didn't even have a candidate in the election, figuring that Bob McCullough's going to win again. Yeah. And he seemed to be such a slam dunk winner, whereas Claire and Josh was being called as nip and tuck the whole way. And, so I think that Bob McCullough losing after 28 years, and he was also a face, not just a nameless or faceless sort of legislator. He was a prosecuting attorney for St. Louis County. And after 28 years losing to a relative newcomer, I thought it was easily the number 2 story of the year.
I would agree with you, Joe, that the McCullough story was the top one for the year. But on a more amusing note, I would say the story that keeps on giving is the loop trolley. and it'll give into 2019 also, I'm sure.
And apparently a mysterious message on the loop trolley website that it's out of service for a while.
It's out of service, but that's sort of the story, right? Yeah. It doesn't start.
Thanks for bringing that up, Brennan.
I would say a story that was huge but didn't really, in my opinion, get its due would be Express Scripts being bought, and I think it was finalized this week, being purchased by Cigna. It was far and away our largest company, the biggest Fortune 500 company. $100 billion in revenues, 26,000 employees, and it almost was not a major story in this town. And I mean, when you look at the revenues of Anheuser-Busch in 2008, they were about 10, 11 billion, a tenth of the size of Express Scripts. I'm not sure any of us really appreciated the size of this corporation and what it might mean to St. Louis.
Well, I think that's a point, but actually I think Monsanto, which was was probably a bigger story in that it appears at least that Express Scripts is sort of, because it's being bought by something unlike its own, products and services, that it's more likely to stay intact as Express Script and and function more pretty much as it has, which has been as a really good corporate citizen. Whereas Monsanto, I think, that one is arguably larger.
bigger deal.
And it's not the only, there's been others, but it's built another year of becoming a branch office town, as Bill McClellan
Well,
likes to say.
and I think business stories have a tough problem rising to the top because they're not romantic, they're not dramatic. They tend to be spilled out in bits and pieces, proposal to buy, and there's never just this one day we woke up and Express Scripts was bought. There's reporting up to it. And Express Scripts wasn't a heritage company, if you will.
Right.
When the Anheuser-Busch, Monsanto, and Emerson Electric that have been around 70, 80, 90 years, I think that's probably what, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying that's what doesn't make it resonate.
Well, I agree. And, it didn't have the advertising of Anheuser-Busch, but I think last year was the 21st largest company in the country. Right. So it's a huge deal. Alvin, I want to ask you about something that I thought was surprising. Okay, in early November, the voters in the state of Missouri passed an amendment to the state constitution called Clean Missouri. And it's got two angles. One would be ethical, lobbying requirements and contribution requirements, limitations for politicians. And the other side would be redistricting. And like it or not, the voters approved that in early November. Less than 2 months later, the governor, at least reported by NBC, Governor Mike Parson is thinking about changing it. He wants to revise it. He says it's not going to be popular, but he's revised these things in the past with the puppy mill legislation, and he's ready to do so again. Whether you like it or not, don't you think that he should allow it to take place at least once and then see how it goes?
Well, I would like to have been in the office when the powers that be financially, and when I say control him, I don't mean like a puppet, but the people that, work with him or tell him what to do, handed that speech to him, because that's what that sounded like. I know it won't be popular, but listen, Republicans have the House majority, supermajority, Senate, and, the governor's mansion. The last thing they need is some busybody coming in and changing the districts so that they lose House seats and that they lose Senate seats. So I guess it's pragmatic, but it's shameful. And once again, it flies in the face of
I
voters.
respectfully disagree, Alvin. When you look at, first of all, we have an initiative process which makes it very easy to get things on the ballot, not only from a legislative standpoint, but to change our Constitution, and that's what this did. One of the concepts is that when we're voting on these kind of initiatives, they should have a single subject. Basically, you should be able to have an up or down vote without swallowing a poison pill. Now, in full disclosure, my husband was a spokesman against Clean Missouri because of the fact it had multiple aspects to it. And I think a lot of people said yes to it because, they want clean. Who doesn't want a clean Missouri, right? We want to make sure that our elected officials aren't being the puppets for the lobbyists. But when you go deeper into it and you see what they're doing with redistricting, there are a lot of constitutional questions. I think right out of the box, you're going to see court case after court case filed on this way this entire process is supposed to work. So what the governor is saying is we need to come back to the people because they don't get to do it legislatively. We get to vote on it again, and it'll be presented as a clean bill for us to consider.
Brenda, when Republicans win, there's something they like to say. 2 words: elections matter. We heard it during the Kavanaugh thing. We've heard it all the time. Elections matter. Not elections matter, asterisk, well, there should have been too many things on the ballot. I don't disagree with you that there were too many things on the ballot, but the voters were spoke, and there is another route that politicians could take, which is called respect the will of the electorate. They voted, elections matter.
But Ray, it is respecting the will of the voters. The voters get to vote again, and if they really want it, they want it, they'll say,
you got it wrong,
we
so we're
meant
going to respect you by letting you vote again to correct yourself. No, I think it disrespects the voters to do this.
I think what it is just yet another piece of evidence that Missouri needs to revise the way it amends its Constitution. The idea that you can get 50% plus 1 vote to change a Constitution, I think, one, it speaks to the problem with term limits, where you get a bunch of legislators in who have only 8 years to do something. So let's change the Constitution. Look at the United States Constitution. It takes 2/3 or 3/4 majorities to actually change it, because anything can change. There's these whims, and the electorate is subject to whims. So you come up with something that says, would you like clean government? It's like saying, do you like babies and puppies? And so they all go vote for it without really knowing what it's in, especially when it's about open records. Oh, it's about open meetings. Oh, it's about campaign donations. Oh, it's about redistricting. But if you don't vote for it, you're against clean government. So they voted in.
Joe,
they need to change the whole process.
How do you know the electorate is not informed about clean Missouri?
That's all I'm saying.
Maybe they like it.
Then let's put the other one out there. Then Parsons' bill would lose.
Well,
if they're so informed, then let the people
Joe,
speak
correct.
again.
Joe,
But they
there's-
already
it
did speak.
But it needs to change the
How many times-
process. And if all of this leads to changing how Missouri amends its constitution, then I'm all for Parsons or a Democrat getting in trying to change this till somebody says, time out. Let's just change
What I
this
would put out is
entire
in 2020,
process.
we get to vote on whether Missouri will have a constitutional convention. Our Constitution has stuff in it that has no business being in a Constitution.
Absolutely.
That's when the voters ought to speak and say, yep, let's come
Well,
together.
that's,
and
with
fix
now
this."
Brenda.
that's a different
I'm with
position.
Brenda.
I agree with you. I apologize for saying this. I agree with you on what you're saying about.
reputation
I
killer.
think Joe. I mean, this is not going to help his career. No, I agree with Joe
Or
that
yours.
no, mine's- Joe. It's a little late for that. Joe. Is right that the process is just horrendous. But that doesn't mean, in other words, so I think the solution is fix the process, and then once we fix the process, if you want to come back and do this, that's fine. But undoing the will of this year's electorate next year is not okay.
Okay, let's move to Brenda on another topic, and this would be Missouri and Medicaid. There's a proposal by the Republicans in Jefferson City to attach a work requirement to people who are on Medicaid if they're able-bodied and of sound mind, and if they're not in charge of kids under 1 year old. But to get Medicaid in Missouri under this plan, you'd have to either have a job, volunteer for 80 hours, go to school, be getting training. You couldn't be sitting on the couch playing video games. Are you in favor of this?
Absolutely. We've got to do something about Medicaid. And if we look at, first of all, I'm not quite sure why people go to bat defending a program which studies have shown don't produce healthy results. So number one, let's just put that on the table. Medicaid is not a good way of making sure we have a healthy population. But that aside, if we look at the Missouri budget, and go back just to 2010, the portion of our budget, total budget, that was consumed for Medicaid was around a little over 18%. Fast forward, for 2019, anyone want to take a guess what portion of our budget's going to be used for Medicaid?
Third.
Over 37%. Okay. And if you just look at Missouri revenues, that's including federal funds. If you look at the growth of Missouri revenues over the last 10 years, 53% of the growth in revenues has been consumed by that Medicaid budget. Okay. States are being innovative. States are supposed to be laboratories for change. It's time for us to be more creative in how we provide health care for those who are underserved.
So what are you saying that the goal of what they want to do is to throw people off? I mean, in other words, we don't want you to volunteer. We don't want you to get a job. We want to throw you off.
No, I think what other states have seen is that, unfortunately, there are a number of programs out there where people are on it, but if you impose a work requirement and they're able-bodied, they will go out and they'll get a job and then they won't have to be on it anymore. And I think that when we have a program like this, and again, I think we need to revisit this whole notion of Medicaid and how we provide health care to those who need health care in a way that's healthy. But if we're not going to do that, we need to look at other options because we're not going to have the luxury of continuing to just allow this program to grow.
But if they're volunteering, Brenda, that's not going to bring down the cost of Medicaid.
No, but they'll be helping in other ways, right?
Charlie, I could not possibly disagree with you more on any subject. First of all, I would cite Jeanette Mott Oxford of Empower, Missouri. One word, cruel, is what I would say to it first.
Why is work cruel?
Yeah.
Well, let me just finish. Let me tell you, because the most misunderstood and maligned group of people in the country are Medicaid recipients. First of all, set aside, they are not Social Security. You got to set them aside because they're covered. The Kaiser Family Foundation, if you want to do some numbers, ran, this is national, 36% of Medicaid recipients are either chronically ill or disabled. The next big group, 30%, meet the federally defined description of people who are taking care of home and family. Another, I think it's 9% are retirees, or students. I think it's students, and about that many are retirees. You get down to the group of people that everybody knows in the mind's eye that we're vilifying when we talk about people that are not getting it. It's 6% of Medicaid recipients are people who can't find a job.
Well,
so it's
so
not.
it's just
it
6%
is a
then.
cost.
So it's not going to be a big deal, and it's doable.
It's a big deal to them. We've already cut in the last 4 years
you're saying-
23,000 poor people off of public assistance in Missouri, and I don't think we should be
It's
proud
not a
of it.
matter of cutting them. It's just saying, okay, if you're going to get this, and if you're able-bodied, if you're between 19 and 55, and if you're not taking care of a 1-year-old, actually, I think it should be kids under 5. But you know, if you are able-bodied, why are you not working or
and
volunteering?
it's only
Well,
8
there's a
hours.
question. If it's 6%, that's 6%
That's
less.
6%.
That's 6% more people who are working
That
on a
couldn't.
volunteer
Didn't you hear
program.
they can't find jobs? They're not people. You assume
So-
that they could all just find jobs.
There are jobs
They
out there.
There's-
That we agree with.
Well, no, we don't agree with
everyone
that.
agrees there's jobs out
And again, the vilification of these poor people.
No.
We've lost 23,000
What is
have
wrong with
lost
work,
benefits.
Ray?
No
What
one
is
says
wrong?
wrong. No one says anything's
Then
wrong with
why-
work.
why
But your
is it like
assumption
that
that everybody
it's so bad it's
that
gonna
wants
be
to look for a
Well, your
job can
assumption
find
that
one.
the American welfare program was built on it's free and you don't have to work. When if
The
you go back to
American
the
welfare
very beginning
program
of
you're
it,
talking about was dead in 1994. You're talking about something that doesn't
well,
exist.
no, because what you're doing is you're saying is here, this is yours. Even if you can work, you don't
No,
have
that's-
to. Yes, that's
That's
exactly
the
what you're saying, right?
pre-Clinton argument. These people we're talking about are not a bunch of people that
So you're
just don't
saying
want
there's
to work.
nobody on the Medicaid rolls. There's nobody on the
I would say
Medicaid
these
rolls
large-
who doesn't deserve to be on there.
I would say that the ginormous percentage of people that are on Medicaid rolls are people in need.
Then
who
let
we
them
should
stay
not
there.
be
Then let them
balancing
stay
They wouldn't be
there.
affected.
Who ought to
They
be-
wouldn't be affected.
Then let
No,
them stay on the
no.
roll.
If we really
that would
cared
be
about
affected.
them, we develop a program that's different than Medicaid because it's
Okay,
not
well,
helping
I agree
them.
with that.
Okay,
Who
real
gets to-
quickly, 'cause we're
just
gonna
like,
move
just like
on.
redistricting, who gets to determine what able-bodied is? Who determines that?
Well, I hope a doctor.
Well, okay, but now
I hope.
my doctor could say like, "Hey, dude, you can't work no more." You know, like until
Well,
I
there-
have
there
a
would
little
be some-
note,
yeah.
You know, that's like,
It's-
"Hey, Alvin Reid can't work anymore. He can get Medicaid," and everybody know that was a joke.
Well,
but-
that's what kind of happens with disability sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's just keep
All right.
going down the wrong
No,
path.
I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Joe, let's
that.
move
I'm
on.
just-
Let's move on. Here's one guy who's not working, but he's kind of in a prison of his own. I'm talking about Eric Garcia, a guy from Honduras who first tried to get into the country in around the year 2000. He was arrested, but he did get back in 2004 illegally, made his way to Poplar Bluff, and the federal authorities have been trying to deport him for 3 or 4 years. He's found his way into the Christ Church, United Church of Christ in Maplewood, where he has been in a sanctuary for almost 2 years, I guess, right now, Joe. So Eric Garcia is being protected by the congregants of this Maplewood church, and the federal government has said, we're not going to go into churches or hospitals to get illegal immigrants at this point. But what do you think? Should he stay there for a long time, or should he leave, or what?
I think he is going. I don't really have a problem with Eric Garcia. He's being granted sanctuary. But before we get into this discussion, let's all stipulate he's here illegally. And I think that's what gets lost in the discussion about immigration, is we seem to think that all immigrants, legal and illegal, are the same, and they're not. There are people in this country legally who do follow a process, who come into this country by the rules. And every country that I know of has rules for that. The United States is not the only draconian empire that requires certain people to fill out forms before they get to enter the country. If the church decides that this is their mission to protect him, then good for them. But let's not make it as if he's anything but an illegal immigrant.
Well, I don't think people are. It's just a matter of fact that he's got sanctuary in a church.
But what happens
and-
is when it comes down to talking about the issue of immigration, they will point out these worst case scenario cases and say, well, what about Eric Garcia? As if Eric Garcia represents everybody who's trying to get into this country
Well,
illegally. And the thing is
Isn't it kind of the American dream? He came here, he's working hard, he's got a family.
Well, no, if you come from Europe and you skin's a different color, then that's the American
There's a lot of
dream.
people from Europe who signed the guest book before they got here, though,
Yeah,
Alvin.
okay. I'm not talking about 150 years
The
ago.
notion,
I'm
because,
talking about right now.
Because this is what happens is that it comes down to is that somehow the United States is being unfair for having immigration laws.
No, that's
And
not
that
true.
is a
But see,
ridiculous
now
premise.
That's
a ridiculous premise.
But that's just talking point stuff. Most people
No.
do not believe that whatsoever. Never have. You know, this freebie that like coming to the United States and blah, 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 blah. Most Americans do not believe that. Never have.
You don't believe that they think you should immigrate legally, that you should come here legally?
Yes, but once
you think
here,
most people just
what are
say
we gonna-
open the doors and let
Oh,
everybody
no,
in?
no.
Okay. Then there is a difference between an illegal
Yes.
and a legal immigrant.
Yes.
And
Well, what-
Eric Garcia is an illegal immigrant.
I don't
And,
deny
and,
that.
and what's curious about this entire scenario is the fact that he's married to a U.S. citizen. They have children. What I don't understand, and I'm not an immigration lawyer, is why he doesn't go back to Honduras. He's married. It's clearly a real marriage. It's not a fake one. He's got kids here. And just go through the process to come back to the States rather than.
Because Honduras is a quagmire. Everyone knows
well,
that.
plus given your-
People can get into the U.S. from Honduras.
yeah.
There is a
No, they're
process
limited.
for that.
They're
Well,
limited.
first of all, thanks to your president, I think anybody from Honduras would be afraid to trust the process there.
So they're
I
gonna
think
climb
first
over
of
the
all,
wall.
So they're going to climb over the wall. Apparently, they're not afraid to be here under his presidency.
Well, I imagine Mr. Garcia is afraid right now, and I think first of all, instead of giving a man of the year like they always do, they ought to give an award to this church. What's the name of the church? I'm sorry.
It's called the Christchurch Church of
Give-
Christ. I
good
believe.
good for them, and good for their good work. And
Okay.
I hope Eric Garcia stays in St. Louis. I will say this.
But
let me say this.
not
I
much
am
of a
not.
life
I am
now.
not for open borders. I understand what you're saying. There have been efforts, bipartisan, for comprehensive immigration reform that addresses the fact that we definitely have to have rules and laws and borders, and we definitely have to face the reality that many millions of people, like it or not, are here illegally, and there has to be a path to citizenship. And there are ways to do it, but a certain person has decided to make this a political
Obama deported more people than this current president.
He did,
as
and,
you know.
and
Okay,
people need
all
to
right,
be
we've
deported.
been down this. Let's,
But,
all right.
Okay,
all
but
right.
I'm saying we need a path to citizenship, and Joe's right. We need to have laws, no question.
With about 4 minutes to go, Brenda, I want to ask you about Neil Bruntrager, who I think is an excellent attorney. He's been appointed, municipal attorney in Webster Groves, but it has generated a lot of protest because he did represent Jason Stockley and also Darren Wilson in their controversial trials. Do you think that it was a bad move for Webster Groves to hire this man?
Well, there's two aspects of that. I think on one level, perhaps they should have been a little more sensitive to how their citizenry would react to his appointment. On the other hand, when we're talking about a criminal justice system, when you're a lawyer and I'm a lawyer, I get a little sensitive about the fact that as a lawyer where I'm giving effective counsel, making sure you have the right to representation, that somehow I'm going to be judged by the people that I am defending. And that's what he was doing. He was performing his role as a lawyer, zealously representing his clients. He was obviously an effective counsel, and because of that, he's being penalized. And I would say to people, you know what? He was pretty courageous. He took on very unpopular cases, but he stood for the rule of law and ensured that they got the right to representation.
And they get paid, so I think, that you're compensated to do a job and do it to the best of your ability. But see, that's why our judicial system works. And, when people commit heinous crimes, somebody's going to represent, the Catholic supplied guy. Look, it's their job. You shouldn't be mad at them for doing their job. I've defended Jack Watkins. We've all, Scott Rosenblum. I will tell you that if Webster had hired the late Johnny Cochran to be their counsel, there would have been 5,000 people down there at that meeting, and wouldn't have.
I think they would have thought that was cool. I will say, let me just jump in here. I do know that Neil Bruntrager has provided pro bono legal services to at least one Syrian refugee family. So he's done some good stuff that people may not know about.
Right. If Kirk was going to do it, somebody said, Alvin, what do you think about doing that? I'd say, I don't have a problem with it. But, hey, people will. So you do have to run that past them.
I completely agree with your expert assessment of the legal profession that you're in. There's no question that Mr. Bruntrager is a good person, good attorney, whatever. That I will say this: this is a political decision when you hire a a council, and if I, regardless of the municipality, if I was making the decision, I would start with the set of experienced, qualified lawyers who were not touched on either side of Ferguson. That's how I would do it, and I think politically, if you violate that little raised rule there, then you're on either side. To your point, whether you got somebody that was considered pro or
but then, Ray,
I
you're
think
telling
Ferguson
people don't
was
get
unique.
involved in controversial issues.
I was saying Ferguson.
Otherwise, it'll kill your career.
I'm saying Ferguson was a unique event in our community's history, and I think for municipal hiring, I would stay away from somebody on either side.
With 60 seconds to go, Ray, prediction for 2019.
What's that?
What's going on in 2019?
Well, I think on the national level, we are going to have a very traumatic year. I really do. And I think we ought to be worried about it. And I think that we're going to go places that we haven't been ever.
Brenda?
I think we're going to see a lot of the repeats of what we've seen this year. You know, we're going to be heading into a presidential election, so let the games begin.
I think we'll find out if something isn't done about violent crime in St. Louis, that we will become the new Detroit.
President of the Board of Alderman race, Jamila Nasheed, Lewis Reid, it will be flat out ugly, and they might split the vote, and some unknown third candidate might end up being the
Interesting.
President of the Board of Alderman.
And I got something. I think, well, I know that Better Together is going to come out with a study in January pointing out how high the sales tax is in this area and how much money is derived from the sales tax compared to other cities and towns.
And
we're out of time.
Okay.
Okay. Save it for your turn. No. Hey, here's what people had to say about last week's program. We are totally discouraged with the St. Louis County Council and how the members changed the outcome of an issue voted on by the residents of our area. Talking about Prop P. What we think we voted for and how the council changes it is outright lying and fraud on their part. We will no longer vote yes on any issue giving them power over our lives. That from Peter Zimmerman of St. Louis County. And, wow, this is the most embarrassed I've been as a resident of this community. First, the area falls for the loop trolley scam. Then, there's the sell-off of the airport, the city's most valuable asset. And now a new soccer stadium ripoff plan. The biggest supporters of these projects live outside the city proper. Public monies are for public needs, not a wish list for the wealthy. Too bad. That from L.W. Williams of St. Louis. And Joe Glass wrote, it was stated that perhaps the NRA should spend more money on gun safety. The NRA has a program launched in 1988 known as the Eddie Eagle Gun Safe Program. The simple message, if you see a gun, stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up. Thank you, Mr. Glass. You can write us care of KETC, send those emails, letters at ketc.org, and those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL, which we'll read on your turn in a matter of minutes. Thanks to Joe Holleman and Brenda Talent for joining us. Thank you, everybody. Happy New Year, but don't go away because
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Happy New Year, almost. We're looking forward to hearing your calls. I'm here with the big cheese, the boss, El Provocateur. I've got to be careful what I say. Keep my job here. We want to thank you all for tuning in for Donnybrook Your Turn, and let's go to the phones to Jerry from St. Louis. Hey, Jerry, what's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I have a 3-step to immigration.
Okay.
Number one, our Congress or senators, whoever you want to call them, has had multiple opportunities to take the millions of illegals and make them legal, and I think they should take those steps.
Okay, that's one.
That's number one. Number two, having a border wall, as Trump wants, he has not listened or not been told about the tunnels and the many tunnels that were put under the walls that we've had for years. That's number two.
Okay, what's number 3?
Number 3, the government's down in South America. Some of them, there's gangs and stuff going on, corruption. That if we took some of those money that he wants for that wall and spent going down there to try to help those people from being having to flee their country because they're feared that they're going to be killed, if we could kind of help them with that.
I think we just did we did just appropriate $11 billion for job creation strategies in Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and maybe Mexico. But I mean, that's interesting that you bring that up.
Interesting points, Jerry. We appreciate it.
Hey, who's next? I think it's Cliff in Sunset Hills. Hi, Clifford.
Good evening, gentlemen. Another good program as usual.
Thank you.
My remarks are also regarding immigration. First of all, if you and I were an immigrant standing in line trying to do it legally, and we see these immigrants who are illegals coming across, what would you think about doing it by the rules? And so whether you're a Democrat or Republican, if we are going to be a nation of rule by law, then we need to get our act together. But the most important thing, irregardless of the immigration issue, is an even greater problem in that demographers tell us that a sustainable world population is 4 billion. Right now we are at 7. It is projected that we will be at 9 by 2050. And these countries that these people are coming from are people who have outgrown the resources that their country has available. And so if you or I were one of them, we would do our best to maintain a livelihood for our family. And so
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay. Interesting point.
Thanks for the call.
My own view is, I think one of the past, it would be nice for some politicians to make their way to New York and read the language of the Statue of Liberty. That's kind of how I view this issue. But we appreciate the call, and
I agree with that. I'm torn because definitely I'm pro-immigration, and I really feel for people who are trying to improve their lot in life and help their families, no doubt. And I also agree with you, caller Clifford, that there are rules, and civilized society has rules that everyone should adhere to.
I definitely believe that we need to have laws and borders, but we can. Let's try to keep it local if we can. Let's go to John from Chesterfield. John.
Yes, I have an issue with what Brenda Talent said. She said how easy it is to get something on the ballot, as though it's too easy. And if you want a constitutional amendment, it takes 8% of the voters of the number of voters who voted for the governor in the previous election, and it has to come from around the state. It's not just it has to come out of 2 out of the 8 districts. And they talk about, and she talked about,
I think 6 out of the 8.
It's easy for her to get.
Right.
No.
That's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
6 out of 8. Yeah. What did I say? Well, at any rate, 6 out of 8.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, there's too many. It says that the issues on the ballot were too varied in that Amendment 1, and I wonder which ones she'd like to not. We should throw out. Say that the.
Well, I think I know.
Of,
John, I think I believe that Brenda Talent has no problem with the ethical issues on Amendment 1. Those were, the number of years that you have to spend between being a lawmaker and a lobbyist, or the contributions, things like that. I think her only concerns were on the redistricting portion, which is about 70% of Amendment 1.
Well, Charlie, Brenda and you and I, we all may have different views of this, but it's not our role to pick apart what the voters meant and which ones were
I
right.
agree. I agree.
I agree with Joe Holleman. I think we should change the process. And John's got a good point. I don't think it's too hard, too easy to get a ballot to get an item on the ballot. I think it's too easy to amend the Constitution. In other words, I think Joe's right that it shouldn't be a 50+1 to amend our Constitution. But having said that, politicians in 2019 ought to respect what people said in 2018.
At least once.
At least
let's see how it goes once.
You agree with that, John?
We're going to have a new census in 2020, and then we'll redistrict after that. It seems to me it's fair to the voters to let it go once, and then if it's a complete disaster, then amend it.
All right, let's see what Sharon in Afton has on her mind tonight. Hi, Sharon.
Oh, hi. You guys really like your program.
Thank you.
My thing is, and I haven't heard about it for a long time, but it's about immigration. It's like I spent a lot of time in South Florida, and if the Cubans came over, as long as they put their one foot on the sand, they were immediate citizens. Now, I don't know if that still applies anymore, but if it does, why do these other people coming over don't have that same sort of opportunity to all of a sudden become a citizen just because you put your one foot on the sand?
I mean, look, the reason we're having this argument is that Donald Trump has used xenophobia and racism to get elected president. Okay, that's the short answer, but we're a local show, so we should stick to the local topics. I will remind our local viewers that some of one of the most important and vibrant communities we have in St. Louis are the Bosnian Muslims, who have come here and been such a great part, continue to be such a great part of the city and county. And so we need to, we ought to embrace immigration. You can be for immigration and still believe there ought to be laws and that there ought to be comprehensive immigration reform and a path to citizenship.
I do want to say,
that's fine.
It's not Donald Trump. The first time this Eric Garcia was arrested was in 2000, and I believe that Bill Clinton was president at that time. So,
and you made a point tonight that President Obama
deported more people than...
and a lot of people need to be deported. That's not the point. I mean, it's not about nobody getting deported that shouldn't be deported. The question is, do we have, as a country, do we still believe in what the Statute of Liberty says? I mean, I don't, it isn't like just because you're here, you get to stay. That isn't the argument. But anyway, let's get back to who's next?
I think it's Jeannie in St. Louis. Hi, Jeannie.
Right.
Hi. What I'd like to talk about is what Brenda Talent had to say. I feel once again that politicians are patting us on the head and saying, we know better than you do. We don't have enough sense to vote on anything. What are they talking about? If we have no more lobbyists, that cleans up one thing. Right. If we get redistricting where it is fair, that cleans up another. What's the problem? I don't understand.
Well, I tend to agree with you. It's quite possible that people who voted for Clean Missouri understood it very well.
It doesn't matter. They voted for it. Elections matter.
I mean,
my point is, if elections matter,
point.
Respect it. We've made it enough. Let's go to the Twitterverse. And let's read the tweet from Colleen Birding. Let's be creative and use Medicaid waivers in Missouri to keep people out of nursing homes. Couldn't agree more. Who's next, Charles?
Kensky 5. The legal term is illegal alien, not undocumented immigrant or illegal immigrant. Actually, people are debating that very issue.
Holy Star 77 says, the proposal on Medicaid is dead wrong. The studies are clear. The Show Me Institute can pretend otherwise, but mentally ill Missourians will be at risk of losing benefits. The far right see Medicaid as an expense to cut, not a service for the poor and vulnerable. Thank you, Holy Star 77, for that sentiment. And all of you, please send your tweets to Donnybrook, hashtag Donnybrook, STL. And now to Diana from St. Louis.
Hi, Diana.
Yes, I was just wondering, I might have missed it, but at one time they were talking about the status of Trump's in-laws and his sister-in-law. with being maybe here illegally. Did they ever prove or say if they were here legally?
Not that I've heard of.
No, I think there's some issue that our very wonderful First Lady, Melania Trump's family, might fall into what they call chain migration when they talk about others. I personally am glad Melania is here, whatever I think of the president and her family. And but you know.
She's from Estonia, right?
I don't know.
I think so.
But,
hey, Gerard, you're in St. Louis. What do you say?
I was wanting to talk about the Medicaid issue. You know, just because somebody has a job doesn't mean that they have health insurance. And they are still going to be required, they're still going to need health insurance through Medicaid.
Right.
So the idea that just because somebody has a job, that they don't need any assistance is a false argument.
Great point.
But the Medicaid threshold is so low. I think if you have any sort of a job, you're going to price yourself out of Medicaid in Missouri, aren't you?
I don't know
really
that.
low.
You know, the problem is this. We're either going to view health care as, I happen to think it's all right, and I think that even if you don't agree with that, we at some point as a nation need to realize that we're interconnected about health care. The idea of thinking we're going to save some money in the budget but by denying some poor people health care, you know, that's the same person that's serving you your fast food meal. I mean, we're all interconnected on health. And first of all, it's cruel. And second of all,
I don't think so.
No, and the real scandal in Missouri is when legislators, because they didn't like Barack Obama, were willing to turn away billions of dollars in federal money pouring into Missouri and St. Louis because they wanted to make a political statement. And that's just a fact. And so I think we got to stop vilifying Medicaid recipients.
I agree that we should have expanded Medicaid
and we
with
need
federal
to stop
dollars.
Vilifying people.
However, there's nothing wrong. In fact, it might be the best thing. We do know, I mean, liberal institutions are taking a look at this. There is, in America, maybe it's only 6%, Ray, there is a group of Americans who are not even looking for work. They're not part of it.
The 6% are the people that don't have a job, not that aren't looking for work.
Well,
the 6%
they
of
may
Medicaid,
not be looking either.
Maybe they are.
You might be doing the best thing for them if you say, in order to get Medicaid, you need to go to school, go into training, volunteer, or God forbid, Ray, get a job.
This idea that there's all these millions of people or thousands of people in Missouri.
Well, I didn't say numbers.
Okay.
I just said
many
there are some.
Sitting on their front porch, enjoying their public assistance because it's such a fat life. I just disagree with it. I just disagree. Of all the problems we have in the state, I just disagree. But let's go on. Who else is? It's not our turn. It's their turn. Let's go to George in St. Louis. Hi, George.
Hi. Yeah, I got a couple quick comments.
Sure.
On the border wall, I think it's a big waste of money. It's like saying we're going to keep all drugs from entering the U.S. by building a wall. I think it's a waste of money. They should interview the Border Patrol agents and get an idea of what their thoughts are on the best use of money to stop illegal immigrants. I think they should go through the legal process to get into the United States. And the other comment was on the Medicare. Neither Obama or Trump has addressed the high cost of prescriptions and big pharma, and I think they should address that issue and try to get the cost of our prescriptions down.
Right. What do you think, Charles?
Well, you know, this president has addressed that, and he has chastised some of these big pharmaceutical companies for the prices.
Right.
You know,
a lot of us that supported Obamacare regretted that the trade-off was made early on strategically to keep pharma out. I have two quick solutions, in my opinion, to illegal drugs coming across the border and illegal immigrants, whatever, being hired. The first one is, if we want to stop the flow of illegal drugs coming into our country, we need to stop buying them. That's one. Americans need to stop buying those illegal drugs, and the flow will stop. The second is, if we want to stop illegal immigrants from being hired, American companies need to stop hiring them. And the place to make that happen is enforce the laws against hiring illegal non-residents, whatever you call
Well,
it. That's my thought.
And they are doing it. Just ask
Those
the folks.
two things
Ask
ought
the
to
folks at
happen.
7-Eleven. They're doing that now.
They're not doing it enough that instead of the wall. But anyway, John from Hazelwood, what's on your mind?
Immigration's on my mind.
All right.
We do have laws in this country. They need to be enforced. Now, the entire discussion always seems to devolve into, well, we're a country of immigrants and so forth, but which is true, and which we should have immigration, but we need to have the laws followed. And the discussion also comes around to, well, we need to have comprehensive immigration reform. Well, whatever we reform it to is going to be laws, and when those laws are broken, what are we going to do? We need to. I just don't know what to do with the illegal problem, and that's the issue that's at least on my mind. What do we do about the illegal part of it? And whatever we reform it to, there's going to be people that break that. What do we do with them?
I think you got a good point. I think we should follow the laws. I think we have laws providing for people seeking asylum. We ought to allow them to do so legally and make a yay or nay decision when they get here. We're violating those laws right now by not letting them get here to seek asylum. I also think we ought to enforce the laws for the fruit growers and so forth that continue to hire people. They ought to be paying a price. We're not enforcing those laws.
Well, if you're going,
and we ought to enforce the border laws.
Well, if Ray, you are going to prosecute the employer who is illegally hiring the illegal alien, then why would you spare the church? If this church in Maplewood is not hiring, but certainly
they're not hiring.
giving refuge to a illegal alien, why wouldn't they be prosecuted?
Because they're a church and they're given asylum. I think that's fine.
Different rules.
Yes, I do think there's a different rule from a church in today's environment, but I do believe...
That's actually not the law, but that's just the way it's worked out.
I happen to believe that companies, if we stop, just like we stop buying illegal drugs, if we stop the demand, we will stop the supply. No, if we stop the demand, meaning our companies didn't feel that they could and should hire people that are undocumented immigrants, then they'd stop coming because the jobs wouldn't be here. But they're not going to do that. So that's unless the laws enforced. Anyway, let's go to Mary in Hazelwood. Hi, Mary.
Hi. I just have a question with the government shutdown. Why are the people in Congress who are not doing a job that we're paying them to do getting a salary?
I agree.
Where other people
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Mary.
Great point. And one of the cruelest things I heard is people talk about how these were non-essential people. First of all, these are every single, how many is it, 500, however many hundreds of thousands of federal workers are by definition middle-class Americans, almost by definition. I mean, you know, they're middle-class working Americans, and we talk about them as non-essential? Really? And we talk about agencies like NASA and the TSA is non-essential.
Well,
you know, it's terrible.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if
discussion.
you're working at the Arch, you have a great job, but it's not essential.
Yes, it is essential. Those people,
No,
if any
it's
of
not.
you are living as
I mean,
in
because
our
life
audience,
can go
they
on
are
without
essential.
the Arch.
You know what? People who work at the Arch should be being buying Christmas presents
That's
right
silly.
now.
That's just silly.
It's not silly.
No,
these are
still
human beings.
Their paycheck goes out tomorrow. The first paycheck they'll lose will be in middle of January.
I don't know.
So they're getting paid right now.
It
Come
is
on, let's get
cruel.
real.
It is a human disaster that is unstable. And I think hopefully maybe somebody out there that works at the Arch
with all due
will call
respect, it is the caller's turn.
Well, that's true. And we've been honoring that. Let's go. Who's next?
I think it's Patrick. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Okay.
I'm calling to challenge the notion that it's just too easy to get a change in the Missouri Constitution. My wife and I are senior citizens. We went out for most of 2017 and part of 2018, gathered over 500 signatures to get this Clean Missouri Amendment on the ballot. Then beginning in July 2018, we worked twice a week, every week, to canvass and support this effort. And then on Election Day, both of us were out at the polling places. Both of us were challenged on our right to poll, and we both resisted, and we were able to complete our efforts. I want to know who is it that's saying that's easy to get an amendment to the Missouri Constitution, because we worked our proverbial arse off to get it.
Good for you, Patrick. You're a hero. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for the call. Let's go to the Twitterverse and see what people had to say. Liz Will, Missourians rejected the roads and bridges tax when it was couched in a confusing, complicated proposal. Redo that one for clarity, but leave the Clean Missouri Amendment that we approved alone.
Hear, hear.
Well, now then you'd be going against the voters' wishes.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, you would.
No, you wouldn't. Here, STL Vargos says visa overstays outpace illegal border crossings. This administration won't talk about that because it doesn't say to their racial politics or really speak to the racial politics. Let's keep the tweets coming from Donnybrook, hashtag Donnybrook STL, and I'm really hoping we get a call. I promise to say no more words when a caller who works at the Arch calls in. Let's go to Liz from South County. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
How you doing?
I have a comment regarding Medicaid. I happen to have a son that is disabled and has been disabled since birth. I didn't know how many people were aware when Missouri did not take that extra money, there is what's called a spend down. And most people on Medicaid now have a spend down, and it can cost anywhere from $50 to over $200 and more. Any comments?
I don't quite follow it. What does that mean, a spend down?
In a sheltered workshop, and we do the best. It's very hard to take care of people like that. And for us, if we lose Medicaid, he loses a lot of services and medical attention that he needs.
Her point is, I believe, what I said, quoting Jeanette Mount Oxford, it's cruelty. We can talk about this in terms of government budgets. The individuals who suffer, it's cruelty.
But I thought the woman said that her son is disabled.
Correct.
So he would not be affected by this proposal.
36% of the people on Medicaid are disabled. And when you start putting them
again,
on,
right. But this proposal to require work for Medicaid, Ray, would only be people who are able-bodied and have mind too.
I think a lot of people that are chronically ill and disabled would fear that they would be included in that.
That's possible. They could fear that.
Who's next? Renee from South County. Hi, Renee.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi, Ray, and hi, Charles.
Hi there, Renee.
My name is Renee Leisure. I am totally homebound. I am on Medicaid and Medicare. And with my husband deceased, I'm able to get his Medicare. But my Medicaid, I have a $407 spend down every month, even though I'm disabled. I have to save all my bills to add up for the whole month and my supplies, my doctors that come in. But if I didn't have Medicare, I would not have people to bring me Meals on Wheels, transportation to go to the doctors. Some of my doctors come here and do my chemo. A lot of the medicines are not covered through Medicare. And then we got to come up with money, our gas bill, our electric bill, medicine, food, and nobody has that money. I only live on $1,100 a month, and my house payment is $675. Plus, I have a high electric bill because I'm on all these machines in my house. But you still have to have your other thing. But see, some people aren't understanding just because they're trying to tell you guys that if they're disabled, no, we still have a spend down that we have to pay monthly.
Okay, I think that's a little bit of a different thing. It sounds like an important issue you're bringing up, but I think it's a little different from what we were discussing earlier.
I actually think let's just go on. Very moving to hear from Renee, and I think it speaks volumes. Let's go to Darren from Jonesburg. Hey, Darren, what's on your mind?
Hello, Ray. And
how are you?
I wanted to comment on, and if you've already discussed this tonight, I apologize. I didn't get to start or watching at the beginning of the show. The new NAFTA bill, as I understand it, or the new trade agreement.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
You did?
We did not. No, we try to keep topics.
Okay.
So what's on your mind real quick? Anything we talked about on your mind?
Yes, the new trade bill apparently will have 10-year protections for pharmaceutical patents, and apparently that's been agreed to by both Mexico and Canada from what I read today.
Okay.
But it appears that the government, Congress or the legislature, will not have any ability to make changes to their patent protections
Yeah, we really,
if the new
Bob,
NAFTA goes into effect.
Darren, I think I was catching up. We got one more call. We appreciate your call. We're going to have one more. Let's see. Hopefully somebody
Bob
from Beaufort.
Real quickly, Bob.
How you doing?
We got 10 seconds.
Okay, well, one thing I want to talk about is the Missouri Republicans are becoming more like the Illinois Democrats. They're all might be going to prison for ignoring the will of the voters. We elect these people who could care less about what their constituents say.
Listen, I don't think they're going to prison, but I kind of like the comparison. And most important from all of us at Donnybrook, have a happy and safe New Year's Eve and New Year, and we will see you again next Thursday night.
Thanks for joining us.